Okay, well, here we are. Audio should be coming through. And as I said, I transferred over the title card thing and stuff over to the YouTube end as well now. And let me just check on this just to make sure. Okay, the color is set. Setting. All right, that all looks good. Leave page. Can exit all of that. So, like I promised last time, I brought over all the quote unquote professional stuff that I set up for Twitch. As for any long-time frequent viewers who don't know, I also start streaming on Twitch now, gaming stuff, since I'm actually capable of that. As now, I have Josh's old gaming PC tower. It's not actually old, it's just old by pro gamer standards. So I can actually stream stuff now. Back on Wednesday, I was streaming Gauntlet Dark Legacy, which is an old PS2 game from my childhood. A lot of stuff's going to be like old PlayStation 2 stuff, but there's going to be some other things mixed in, like Dark Souls, Subnautica, etc. So if you want to join me over there for any of those at any point, those will be over on Twitch. And the since Twitch automatically deletes the recordings now for any of the past streams in the future, if you want to see the past recordings or whatnot, just go here on YouTube, Max Legere Twitch VODs. I've made a separate account for that. And so those will be there. But anyways, looks like the overlay is working and the color changed back to a more viewable one. So let's start going through stuff. Do we have anybody other than me here? 8 people physically. So as we discussed back on Tuesday, and we have to fix Epic Pen again because it always fails. So wait 1 second, do that, do that, do that, and then come back in. So the Iran war restarted over the course of this week, except it was basically fake. So Iran attacked but did not really harm 2 ships that were transiting the Strait of Hormuz, which the US used as pretense to launch strikes across Iran. However, those airstrikes were mostly on spots that were conspicuously unmanned, and then Iran launched a bunch of missiles and struck a number of sites in Kuwait and Bahrain at US bases that have been dismanned since the start of the actual war a few months ago. And there's, obviously, there's no way Iran doesn't actually know that. So Iran also struck. Iran also struck empty buildings, and we did this back and forth for a few days. And as I said in the description, it was likely an experiment to see how high we could, I guess, together make oil prices jump. If we restart things, or at least look like we're restarting things while traffic is still flowing, as traffic did not stop through the Strait of Hormuz during all of this restart, which is part of how you know it's fake, or it was a fake out, it was theater. The rate of traffic is still only one third of what it was before the war started, of what it was up until February 28th of this year. But that one third of traffic did not actually stop during this supposed reignition of the war. So that, has everything leaning towards this being a market manipulation experiment. One that some people might not want to hear this part of what it looks like Iran is actually now in on. Wanted to see how high, how much of a spike we could generate by restarting the war, but without disrupting the actual export of oil. And it looks like not that much because the market has gotten lackadaisical about everything. So it jumped from 68 up to about 60, or sorry, about up to about 75 at the highest. So people at the top of everything were probably hoping uh, that we could get a repeat of the 60 to 110 jump, and that we could maybe fall into a semi-permanent pattern of doing this over and over again every few months. And so who are, and so those in the current U.S. administration and to their own extent, Iran now also looks like they want to willingly participate, or would have if this really worked, at least. It did not obviously work as well as everyone most likely hoped it would, but it looked like it was an experiment to see if they could maybe start doing this repeatedly every few weeks or every few months to try to just create a cycle of infinite money spikes to gamble on, so long as those currently in power on both ends remain currently in power. But it failed, or at least at scale it failed, because again, only jumped from 68 to 75. But so traffic overall is back up to about one third of the rate it was pre-war, but it's really slowly going back upwards. Qatar is back up to full pump out. Saudi Arabia is back up, and the UAE is back up. Kuwait and Iraq are coming back a bit slower, but the companies sending tankers to them are just some of the ones that have been a bit more hesitant and have wanted to wait a bit longer to see. But regards to like the pipelines, no one's canceling anything. Everybody's still going through with and signing all the additional things to go all in on the various pipeline stuff. Everybody except Iran, that is, because even in the event of this stuff, Iran still has coast out here. And the only way stuff gets prevented from leaving their coast out there is if the U.S. blockades it, which uh, the U.S. announced it would do another blockade. I'm just going to put B here so I don't have to write things out. The U.S. announced that it would do another blockade at the start of this week when the war resumed, quote unquote, except we did not actually move any ships into position and we didn't blockade anything. Everything just kept coming and going as normal. So it was entirely words on paper. And Trump, I guess, saw that everyone kind of saw through it. So he tried to make it look more Trumpish and made some like big public rambly rants about how uh, Iran closed the strait again, even though it didn't. and how they better open it by tomorrow, or else they'll be erased from history. So he's trying to salvage this attempted market manipulation spike, but it's not really working. So that's what went down and what came as a result of this over the course of the week that we have now culminated in. All right, who do we got? Nobody who's alive. That's what we got. So talked about last time that after a few years, Saudi Arabia could not help themselves, and they've resumed bombing Yemen. And so, as a result, the Houthis in Yemen have attacked a number of Saudi ships at sea, and they've been sticking true to their word this time about only attacking Saudi ships, whereas back during 2023 and 2024, when they said they were only going to attack Israeli ships, they including attacked just any ship in existence that happened to come by. But this time they have only been targeting Saudi ships exclusively, and Saudi Arabia has not let up on their new campaign, which has now also caused the interior situation to deteriorate. So let me draw like the more angry eyes. I'm messing this up. Mega angry. And so the two primary sides in Yemen, there's technically three, but there's only two that really matter power wise. They were in like some kind of actual power sharing negotiations up until this point. The Houthis, right or wrong, have accused the other side of siding of collaborating with the Saudis in the bombing campaign. So now all the stuff between the two primary sides in Yemen has now fractured and broken down. And so that is how that situation is proceeding over there. And then hopping over into Sudan, guess what we got? So you guys remember last year there was that town somewhere around there, city, town, uh, what have you, surrounded by like refugee campouts and everything. There are some like 160,000 people there, and the RSF forces arrived and went through there, and after that there were zero living people there. There still were 160,000 people. They were just in the satellite visible mounds of mass graves and piles of hundreds of burning bodies that were also seen on satellites. Well, the same thing is apparently on the verge of happening to another town slightly to the northeast of that one, or another mass settlement where displaced people are. Uh, Roughly similar numbers, but slightly higher, like a bit closer to 200,000. So another giant massacre might be about to happen in the next few weeks that no nobody seems to care about or want to stop. So that's happening. And then over in Mali, in some of the last camps and outposts north of the line, north of basically the Azawad line, we'll just refer to it as, I think technically they want the Tuaregs want the Azawad line to be more along here or something like that. But one of the last places where there are Malian forces and Russian mercenaries have been going through wave after wave of separatist attacks, and the personnel staffing at those bases have been nearly wiped out, although more Malian forces were trucked in over the desert, but the mercenaries are effectively gone. And they did have an attack helicopter I don't remember if it was an Mi-28 or an Mi-35, but that got shot down. And there were fascinating pictures of many dismembered bodies lying across the camps and deserts, which, for obvious reasons, I'm not going to show on stream. We get anybody? Here we go. Uh, maybe what the thing is, if it is just a joint U.S. Iranian attempt at market manipulation, or if that's what it's become now, then if you go too real, then remember the shipping industry itself is also its own entity that can make decisions. If you make it too real, they themselves will just decide to stop shipping things again, like they did during the war itself. And so nobody actually then gets to make their money in that scenario because the oil's not moving, it's not able to be sold. With the exception of predominantly the UAE and Saudi Arabia in terms of Persian Gulf members. But if Iran does something too real, then the US would also have to do something too real. And like if the US does something too real again, then they might actually piss off the Iranian regime, which might make Iran not want to participate in this joint manipulation any longer. Or they could do like an actual blockade of Iran again, but only do it for like a week or so, enough to make everything look real, etc., but not enough to uh, make Iran think that they're just using it as a ploy and are really turning things back into the actual conflict this time. But I mean, we only have to wait through the weekend. We'll see what happens next week if we try to attempt this whole price rally again. Granted, the price should still be up in triple digits right now, given the actual physical supply situation, not just for a few countries, but worldwide. But the market has decided that oil is $71 a barrel because they've decided it's $71 a barrel. But yeah, I mean, you could, however, again, yeah, if you, that would be like the one thing is if you do try going too real, you could eventually just end up pushing or spooking the shipping industries into not moving anything because they're convinced that it's real. And you can't just like bring all of them in on it because then eventually you're going to start spreading things too thin amongst too many people, and eventually the truth would the truth would eventually start leaking out. Not that that really should be a concern because nobody cares. Everybody in every position of power in every country on earth is like consistently getting proven to be satanic pedophiles. So like nobody cares. So like the growing range, the growing social media to blame partially disconnect, or I guess nihilistic doomerism disconnect, that has resulted in a point of literally anyone in power can basically do anything at this point and nobody cares. Uh, should have, especially on the U.S. side, especially for people like Trump, should have them driven to a point of like not really even trying to hide anything, but they still are concerned about not, I guess, not really. How would you phrase it? No one's like concerned about accidentally saying the quiet parts of anything out loud anymore, but everyone who has quiet parts that they want to hide about stuff or previously wanted to hide is still afraid about actually getting up on a podium and shouting the quiet parts out loud. No one's afraid of like slipping up and saying them, but everyone's still afraid, outside of Twitter at least, everyone's still afraid of just openly shouting the quiet parts out loud. Meanwhile, up in the Russia Ukraine dynamic, the systematic annihilation of Russia's oil and gas infrastructure continues. The refinery in Saratov was hit again. Refinery in Rostov was hit again. And the replacement equipment was hit, and the repair crews and engineers that were working on that stuff were hit in the process. Plus, up around here in Tver, that one was also hit. And a few other locales, like some of the far away oil storage depots at the farthest end of what Ukraine has proven they can hit. Some of the, because most of the storage depots, so many of the oil and oil product storage tanks out here in the western chunk of Russia have been hit. The ones out further this way that were still in existence are now on fire and burning. Uh, that was one of the few that hadn't been hit yet in Rostov. Something in the port in Rostov was hit. I never found out exactly what that was. This one in Stavropol. Why does everybody have cringy music? But yeah, they got quite a number of tanks in that one. Here's the one out in Tver. Is that? Yeah, that's all. That's the same one that's out in Tver. Is this the? Oh, no, this is another one of the pumping stations. As remember, a lot of the fields that are producing oil in present day are out around here, with like most of the stuff being out here. The oil and gas has to move around the country, both for domestic use and for export, via a massive pipeline network. And so, all along the pipeline network, obviously, there's different stations that keep pumping it forward to keep everything pressurized so that it keeps moving. Two stations in the western portion were hit earlier, and now a pumping station out in Bashkortostan was also struck 2 days ago. Oh, random, not related to Ukraine Russia stuff, but random. Syria's re rise for the moment continues. They're now getting taken off of everybody's sanctions list. Uh, not things aren't going to last too long because Israel kind of wants them to remain as a failed state. So they're inevitably going to start something new in there. They just didn't have to repeatedly bomb them over and over again like they're doing to Lebanon, Gaza, and the West Bank because previously Syria was doing that to itself. But now the IDF kind of sees that as a situation where they're going to have to step in and do it because, with the exception of Jordan, they want to be surrounded by failed states, something that the Israeli government has just flat out publicly said. And also, across Azov and the Black Sea, Russian oil tankers and other various cargo vessels have been getting hit by the dozen for the last few nights via both aerial and sea drones. So those were some of those. More electricity stuff was struck on Crimea. Oh, this is the same video, but yeah, more and more ships. Like previously, it was Ukraine would attack like one or two ships every month or so. Now, for the past 3 nights, it's been like a dozen getting disabled every single evening. Where was the other bit? Oh yeah, there's various satellite images of different vessels stalled and smoking. There's one that's right up along the coastline. That's a general, looks like a general cargo. Actually, no, that's probably a empty container ship. Yeah, if you actually looking at it, it looks like you can see a lot of dense metal structure there. That looks like the different that looks like the different. I forgot what they call them. Girder systems, I think. The different like girder systems that the rows of shipping containers are put in. Here's some more. One smoking, one smoking. That one I can't. That one line across the middle. That's probably an oil tanker. This one, it's really hard to tell unless can you zoom in further? No. But it kind of looks like there's individual square units, which means that's probably a bulk carrier, which are the ships that have hollow interiors, but they're used to carry like solid solid cargo, bulk solid cargo, like grain, sugar, metal ores, etc. Like if you go on a maritime traffic tracking site, you'll see like a constant stream of these ships, of dozens of them going going northwards from Western Australia up to China, carrying a bunch of iron ore and aluminum ore, and obviously coming the empty ones coming back down the traffic lanes as well. And Russia's first tanker of imported gasoline, since their refinery capacity has collapsed so far, they're now having to turn to the only one who's actually agreed to give them anything anymore, India. And India's begging Ukraine to not strike the gasoline tanker they're sending because it apparently is going to be sent into the Black Sea and is going to go to the port in Novorossiysk, and is claiming, asking them to not do so because it's humanitarian cargo And I guess, according to India, uh, Russia's going to enter a famine if they don't get this cargo, which is not true. I mean, the agricultural situation in Russia is going to severely deteriorate, but this is hilarious. This is hilarious levels of please don't hit me. I'm a girl. Oh, we got more people, and we got cash money. No, the tankers in the Black Sea and Azov are they're not leaking. Those are primarily rear section engine fires. This track here is the wake of the ship. In this case, it's literally been like you can see it moving this way, like it's moving sideways. It's plowing water around. The black stuff isn't oil, and this is smoke. It's coming from the very back where the ship's engine is. Now, eventually, there might be some that would be probably inevitable. Uh, there have been some in the Sea of Azov before already because a Russian oil tanker literally broke itself in half just because it was built really shitty. But there was also one in the Persian Gulf off the coast of uh, what's its name? Starts with a K. Starts with a K. Karg Island. Because one of the floating storage tankers Iran was using was really old and it ended up leaking when they tried filling it. Uh, then the only other stuff we have to hit again is over here in the US and Mexico, where we have the Colorado River, which goes like this and around here and then up along here. So the river flow is even more in danger than I actually previously stated. So you have Lake Mead, the big mega reservoir. You have Lake Powell, uh, similarly sized but slightly smaller reservoir. And then up here you have Flaming Gorge, who is being sacrificed to send excess water downstream to Lake Powell to avoid Lake Powell having to send more excess water downstream to keep Lake Mead full because Lake Powell is already dangerously low. It's getting really close to the point where the water is getting near the turbine intake levels. And for the dam, if it goes below those particular levels, then it would, for the river to keep flowing for Lake Powell, from Lake Powell down southward, the water would have to be released through these extra emergency tunnels that are down there about 100 feet lower. The problem is that because we're getting close to that, those tunnels were inspected by the maintenance crew at the dam recently, just to make sure, that they'd be a-okay to start dumping the river out through them. And it turns out they are not structurally sound. They found those tunnels, those like last ditch drainage tunnels are very, very cracked and structurally degraded. Uh, from, I guess, the weight of, thousands of tons of dam above them. And I mean, it's not like they've been used all that much. So they never had all that much like water pressure inside of them pushing like against things. So those letting a bunch of water out at the very least, they will probably still have to take the risk and release some, but at the very least, releasing water at the river's full normal would-be flow rate through those emergency tunnels below the power generation openings is not an option. So the only thing solidly on the table for the moment is to fully sacrifice Flaming Gorge for as long as that will let things last. But after that, Lake Powell is kind of screwed one way or another as to not, sorry, as the water level will either go below the power generation level because they have to keep releasing water some way, and that's the only safe way. And then the power generation will fail, or they'll stop the power generation because the water will go get close there, but they still can't just keep releasing the water through the lower tunnels. This is Flaming Gorge. You see this sudden abrupt drop. That was when they did a offload dumping sacrifice. They're now doing another one, not as severe, but if they decide the situation calls for it, and this is elevation feats. This is how high the water surface is above sea level. This isn't the depth of the lake. The U.S. lakes measurement system is weird. Don't question it. But Lake Powell is down here, and the absolute bottom lip of the intake for the power generation system is at 3490. But in all effect, it actually shuts off at about 3500. Wait for the site to load. It's taking its time. It's taking its time. But so if you live in the Southwest, if you live in Arizona or Nevada or Southern California, you are on the doorstep of having like legitimately severe water restrictions placed on you at some point in the immediate future, as in the next few years, maybe if you're fortunate, not until the early 2030s. But you're looking at a case of like actual mandated water restrictions, as in they might forcibly program like your water meter thing to just cut off the water supply to your house or something if you exceed a certain amount within 24 hours. But also that's going to, all right, this just isn't going to load. Let's try a refresh. Also, this is going to cause the Arizona stuff. There we go. So you see, this is normally the refill phase where snowmelt gives Lake Powell some life back for temporarily. There was basically nothing this year, and now it's already fallen below that point, and we're still going. But thankfully, a lot of the stuff in Arizona that would probably take the hit and collapse would be a lot of cotton growing, which is not something you should be doing in a desert. and a lot of U.S. cotton is grown in Arizona and western Texas, which is, the dry, more desert part of Texas. So that will collapse, and a lot of the alfalfa growing will also collapse, which previously a lot was getting exported to Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia doesn't grow it there because they're in a desert, and they kind of realize that. However, we didn't stop using the water and growing the alfalfa altogether. We just switched customers. Now we sell the alfalfa from Arizona to China, who then sells it to Saudi Arabia. So we just switched. We just added a middleman so that the farmers could get around the legal issue. Blah, blah, blah. Yes and no. For the price stuff, as the demand destruction and the diversion pipelines and everything, it resulted in the supply deficit when Hormuz was completely choked off, being only about half of what it otherwise would have been. Sometimes getting as low as only 6 million barrels per day of deficit. So you could argue that maybe instead of 100 plus, oil should have only been 90, but down at 70, this is actual like delusion. This is coming from empty and strategic petroleum reserves worldwide and commercial inventories as well. We're now past 100. U.S. was at 420 million barrels in the strategic petroleum reserves. As of the end of last week, we were down to 319. Legally, supposedly, it can't be drawn below 254. And between 140 and 160, uh, the actual ability to draw oil back up out of those underground systems uh, quickly collapses. So once you get down to that level, instead of being able to suck it out at, you know, rate X, you'll quickly find yourself only able to pump out like 1/2 X, and then a few weeks later, only able to pump out at a rate of 1/4 X. And Cushing is getting very close down to its threshold. It's at about 19 million barrels. It's one of the commercial private inventories in Oklahoma, and its threshold, it's basically uh, everything related to it in terms of like capacity, and its minimum threshold is basically 10% of the SPR. So its threshold would be likely around 14 to 16. And similar situations in various places around the world. I just can only access the US numbers frequently because the US is one of the only places that like publishes stuff weekly. Everybody else either does monthly or annually. So you could, to some extent, like argue that maybe instead of 100 and 120, maybe oil should only be between 90 and 100 because of everything. But this is still uh, this is still completely irrational. 70 or below 70, which is as low as it got at the lower point. But anyways, oh yeah, sorry. Back to what I was on just before that. Let's get back here. No, you guys are supposed to stay unchecked if I check you off the first time. But there are some people freaking out incorrectly about the potential issue with the Arizona agriculture stuff and some of the southern Utah stuff. That's not going to be a famine thing. For one, again, the the U.S. grows a lot of food. Uh, Over 700 million people's worth of food, even just referring to basic grain products, just referring to like wheat, oats, etc. Technically, the US could feed over a billion people if we did away with the excessive like amount of store space and the sheer degree of like overstocking stuff we do. Like there's 10 layers of each different type and flavor and brand of bread on like the bread shelves. And there's like 8 billion Walmarts for every one block of every town street. But the US feeds roughly 700 million people, uh, about 343 million of those domestically, with more than double the actual amount of food they need being available to them via all that excess store shelf provision. And then the other 350 million or so is all stuff that gets exported. So even if there were wheat being grown in the Southwest, it taking a hit would kind of just like dampen the excess number. But also, most of the like primarily food stuff, human food that the U.S. grows is primarily along the plains, sometimes occasionally called the Evergrains instead of the Everglades down in Florida. Evergrains for a reason. This is where the grains are, and also where a lot of the animals and stuff are too. Although some of the animal stuff is also down in Texas and a bit over in Wisconsin and Michigan. The A lot of the fruits and vegetables are along the south in the Central Valley in California and up in Washington. The Central Valley of California, that is a different water supply than the Colorado River Aqueduct dependent south. The Colorado River Aqueduct pipeline comes over to LA. Los Angeles is one of the ones who will take a huge hit from that when the issues with that inevitably arise. But yeah, the stuff that's going to collapse and be decimated in Arizona and along the border agriculture is predominantly a lot of cotton and a lot of, again, alfalfa and other similar crops that are primarily being exported. And again, previously, this was to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia actually owned the farms legally, but we banned that because, that that seemed dangerous. And so, switching away from that, now the stuff gets exported to China, as I said before, who then sells it to Saudi Arabia. So the end user of all the alfalfa being grown down there in Arizona is still the same. It's just that now it goes through China as a middle. So this is going to be bad water availability wise for a lot of people in the Southwest. But the sufferers of the agricultural hits, like as in the availability of product, are actually in this case also going to be Saudi Arabia, apart from just the U.S. But the U.S. will become more cotton import dependent than it already is. We already are for the most part. We do grow some in Arizona and Texas, but uh, largely dependent on uh, places like Pakistan is one of the big global sources. But this will be a severe issue for Las Vegas when Lake Mead inevitably, when Hoover Dam inevitably has to shut down because that's 2.5 gigawatts of constant baseload power generation that Las Vegas immediately loses, and that has to be compensated for. And Las Vegas does have other power plants located around it, natural gas fired power plants primarily, and they can turn up or down based on they dial up or down based on the different demand levels throughout the night and day and across the different seasons. However, when Hoover Dam's 2.5 gigawatts is just gone, then across the other power plants, they have to then supplement this. They have to then operate their like regular baseload minimum has to increase to provide this total amount. So then the total margin they'll have left available between their maximum capacity and what they're constantly running at will shrink. So at any point of higher demand, like especially in the summer and during the daytime, the peak threshold will be so thin that Las Vegas is going to experience constant catastrophe electricity wise. So this is going to finally lead people into the realization that Las Vegas should not exist, and we will hopefully abandon it. Although that's probably putting a little bit too much trust in human thought processes. Let's see. This is probably where it's going to end soon. Oh, dang. Where did everybody go? Was it the Colorado River stuff that really just made everybody leave that hard? Or did I lose internet without realizing it? Uh, Not that much. Remember, Brazil, Brazil makes about like 700,000 barrels per day of sugarcane ethanol. However, Brazil consumes, Brazil's vehicles use between 600 and 650 of that. So what you're saying is that their exports are going from between 50 to 100 up to somewhere between 100 to 200,000 barrels per day, which is not a lot of stuff on the global scale because you specified exports, which is what lets me know that's real. Because if you say capacity, just suddenly in 1 year, doubling the corn, or sorry, your sugar cane, the actual productive form of ethanol, with a high net EROEI as opposed to corn ethanol, uh, you're not going to double like from 700,000 to 1.4 million barrels per day of sugarcane ethanol in a single year. You can expand uh, gradually year by year, going up by 50 to as high as 100,000 per year. That sounds reasonable or realistic. So you specified exports, and thus we can quickly deduce that, and that falls within the more realistic number. All right, that's okay. And then everyone's coming back. All right, I must have just lost internet without realizing it. Maybe. All right, I don't know how 310, yeah, 309. So 4 minutes ago. Let me see. What was happening then? I'm gonna actually listen to myself. I'm not seeing any disruption, so I don't know what that was about. But anyways, yeah, that's probably going to be it. Uh, thank you. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Thanks for the €2. Uh, and I'll be on Twitch tomorrow night. I'll be playing more Gauntlet Dark Legacy. The Twitch link is back up there. I'll be on Twitch tomorrow night from 7 to probably 10:30 or 11 p.m. US East time. The Twitch, uh, playing games and stuff on Twitch is going to be Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays, and it's always going to be like 6:30 or 7 p.m. start time. The YouTube streaming stuff will remain as Tuesdays and Fridays, and sometimes Sundays, depending on if enough stuff happens in the 48 hours between Friday and Sunday. But that's going to be it, unless anything else comes up that I have to address. Yeah, I heard one word. I heard one word stutter when I was listening to it. But other than that, I was expecting to suddenly see like a buffering circle show up or something. Because the last time I saw like a sudden abrupt valley like that, everyone told me it's because the stream went offline for like 30 seconds. Yeah, that's not the first time that a 24-hour ultimatum has happened, but I'm not putting that in a real category yet, at least, unless I see like evidence that we're switching over to real, because everything that happened over this week was strikes on, for the most part, empty buildings and unmanned equipment. So it was pretty clearly a theater show to try to test how much we could force oil prices to spike for those who are doing insider trading and trying to enrich themselves while they have the world's strings in their fingers. But market didn't really buy into it, only jumped from 68 up to $75. So, like I said, they Trump and the others, and now Iran apparently throwing in with them because they also predominantly struck empty buildings. We're probably hoping they could not stop the oil exports. The U.S. The U.S. and Iran both wanting that to continue, but both wanting Iran from a national perspective because they want the national revenue. The U.S. from a Trump perspective because the only thing that matters to Trump is Trump, and the others who are participating on manipulated insider trading. Because for the U.S., if this had actually worked and it spiked prices back up into triple digits, that would not be economically good. But national national benefit wasn't the actual U.S. aim in that matter. It would have just been for those in the administration to get their trades in and double their money overnight. But such efforts clearly did not go as was anticipated, and we'll see if we repeat this whole process next week. Okay, thankfully my yawn did not come through, I don't think at least. But that's going to be it. So I'll see some of you on Twitch maybe tomorrow night. If not, then or potentially Monday night also. But if not, then probably here on Tuesday. Unless I might have to move one of those because me and Josh are going up to Myrtle Beach on either Monday or Tuesday, but I don't know which. So I'll have to put out a post about that. But thank you everybody who showed up, and I will see everybody around next time.